I'm Janille, and this is my husband Sourena, and welcome to My Lover Reads. Today's video is going to be the reading preferences tag. I don't know if this is like an actual YouTube tag or anything. I just found some random questions about reading preferences because I like to be prepared and have lists. And so I thought we would just, this is another sort of about us video, introduction to our channel. So I thought we would just go back and forth and answer these questions so that, if you're interested in what our reading preferences are, you can have a watch.
Yeah, like as we said in the last video, generally the channel is going to be right now, reading Wheel of Time, going through all of them, basically doing quarter of a book per week. And I'm going to be doing the same, but not to one big series, but just to different, contemporary romance? Is that a fair way to
Not
categorize
necessarily.
them?
What if I throw a Victorian romance?
Different romances.
Romance
books that Janille's recommending to me.
Anyway, so I will, ask the questions and we'll both answer. Okay, so first question. Which perspective is your favorite? So I'm guessing first person or third person. I guess also an argument can be made for second person.
Yep.
But
which sounds jarring.
What do you consider second person?
Like you walk through a door, you sit down.
Right? I think so, yes. Like if you're a character in it, you mean? Mm-hmm. But a lot of authors do that in more subtle ways. So for example, in Jane Eyre, which is my favorite novel of all time by Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre is telling the story in first person, but she speaks to the reader. So in that case, is she technically dipping into second person and if she says, reader, I married him, which is the famous line from the novel, am I now, as the reader, a character in the novel? Is that also second person?
I would still categorize it as first.
Anyway, so let's say first or third person, what perspective is your favorite? You can answer first.
Third person, definitely. Just because it gives you, it gives you more flexibility. Like I always enjoy when there's a description of a scene, but it's not exactly first person, but the description is still described as though the
from
author
the perspective of the character.
Yeah, being oh, this person said this in the most untrustworthy way, but you also know that that's because the chapter you're reading is from the perspective of who are X or Y, but also then it gives you flexibility to jump out of it if you need to. And to kind of have everyone's thoughts, but in a very exposition-y kind of way.
Like a fly on the walls.
Yeah, exactly. So it's my preference.
I prefer first person, of course, because I really enjoy characters and learning about the characters, and I just want to know what the character is thinking and feeling. I'm a very emotional person. I'm a very empathetic reader, so I want to be able to put myself into that character's shoes. And I feel yes, in third person that can happen, but I really think first person I do find it more emotional and intimate. But this isn't always the case. I do enjoy third person narration as well. I'm trying to think of a book that I love that's third person though. If I'm thinking of my favorite books of all time. No, that's not true because Charles Dickens usually writes in third person, I would say, and I
enjoy. Yeah, but it's not an automatic no.
No.
I read all of Dresden Files and I love them, and they're all first person.
Yeah.
The whole way, and actually only one character is first person, and I thought it's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, on to the next question. This is an easy one. Which format is your favorite? Hardback, paperback, I don't know why those are separated here. I would just say physical book, but audio, ebook, etc. You go first.
Both. I want to listen to it and have it in front of me because I'm a slow reader.
If you want, refer back to our first video where we introduced the channel and the fact that Sourena both listens to the audiobook and reads the physical book at the same time.
Because I read really slow otherwise.
Yeah.
And I also have heard people be oh no, you gotta read the physical book to absorb all the blah blah blah. So.
But which would you, if you had to only choose one? You'd have to choose the audiobook.
Honestly,
otherwise
due to the
limitation,
due to the limitation of how slow I read. If not for that, definitely the book itself.
And English, as you said in another video, English is your second language.
Yeah.
So.
And I never got
like French
into
is my
reading.
second language, and I read really
Mhm.
much slower in
Yeah.
French.
There's a ton of people whose second language is English, and they they read a lot,
Yeah.
they whatever. But I just
But
never
you're
got
always
into it. Yeah, I never got into it when I was younger. So now it's just not accessible.
For me, I absolutely would say physical books. Definitely paperback. Not a hardback fan. Absolutely not. Holding a hardcover book while a toddler is sleeping on you is next to impossible. And also, hardcover books are really annoying to fit in your backpack or your purse, to take them on the subway to work. Like, if a subway's packed and you're trying to hold a hardback, no, absolutely not. However, I will say that I recently got very into ebooks, which I never, ever thought I would. I purchased a Kindle. The main reason being that I wanted to read a lot of indie published romances through Kindle Unlimited, which are impossible to get otherwise, basically. Some of them don't even have print versions.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed reading on the Kindle. I sometimes used to read on my phone, which is like a lot harder on your eyes, and like it's a smaller screen and everything. So I do enjoy reading on the Kindle, but I would always choose a physical book.
And
always.
So with that, I have to say, I hear everything you're saying about it being harder to carry, be awkward to wear.
Oh, don't.
I just love
You
the way.
prefer hardcovers?
I just like the way they look on the shelf. Yeah, 100%.
That's so ridiculous.
I know.
They don't even look that much better on the shelf. Like if you
Depends.
have a row of really nice paperbacks, it looks amazing.
Sure.
Hardcovers take up so much space, and they're so hard to put on a bookshelf. And like certain types of bookshelves, they don't lend themselves to. Like floating shelves, they're too heavy.
It depends on what the publisher does with it as well, like how much I guess.
Okay.
So, for
Sorry,
example.
I'm going to interrupt you. Rhythm of War.
Exactly.
Which is giant and just came out recently, and you have in hardcover, and you
Love
have the rest of them in mass market paperback.
Yep.
How hard was it for you to read that, though?
No, but
you had to literally put weights on it to keep the pages down.
I did.
That's
little
messed up.
5-pound
That
base.
is so messed up.
No, I in terms of difficulty, I agree 100%. But actually, that's the exact example I was going to bring up. Yeah, so I have the first 3 books in the Stormlight series, all like paperback, like the little like pocket version paperbacks, even. Yeah, like super
I think
small.
it's the mass market.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of art in it. It's pretty, it's beautiful still. Like all the effort was there, but it's just when I put it beside my Rhythm of War copy, which is this like just stunning, beautiful. Like you take the dust jacket off, and inside there's a map. On the actual cover,
there's a different production value to that type of book.
Sure, it depends on that.
You know, for me, reading romances, for example, contemporary romances, like there's no art.
No.
In the hardcover. Actually, I'm finding a lot of them now are not even published in hardcover. Like they're straight to paperback. Props to that. So
it depends on how much I guess the leap. Like, okay, if I was gonna read a romance, I'd rather read paper.
Do you prefer a character or plot focused book?
Character, 100%. Plot. It can be a great plot if the characters are garbage. It's painful to get through.
It's interesting that you say that though, because I feel like as a reader of fantasy, traditionally I want to say characters, maybe not traditionally, but a lot of the genre, the characters aren't the focus. You just happen to be reading a lot of character-driven fantasies.
But you know what? Even when the character isn't the main focus, the characters are what brings it to life.
Yeah.
Like the whole assumption that it's all about the world building and the characters take a backseat to that. Those are fantasy books that aren't that good. Like even within the fantasy community, the most hardcore fantasy fan would say like, yeah, they did the world building really well, and I was able to get that from it and enjoy it. But yeah, it's not one of my faves. The rest sucked. Like those are good fantasy books.
I think it's the same. Wouldn't you say it's the same with like a TV show? Like you want to root for the characters.
Yeah, 100%. You can have a super overdone, tired story.
Maybe that's not always true.
What? What do you think?
What about Justice League? You love the characters, but nothing could save that movie.
And the whole plot wasn't. But even the characters weren't that good. Like
Joss Whedon version.
Yeah. The acting was.
We haven't watched Zack Snyder's Justice League because we have a toddler and we don't have 2 years to spend.
Yeah. But no, you know what? The characters in that movie weren't even that. The actors did a good job of what they could with what they were given. But even it's not like their lines and everything were, and their development in the story was brilliant though. And just the plot was bad. Like No, the only aspect of the characters that was good, aesthetically I thought they all looked good enough, and the acting with what they were given was as good as it could be. That's it. It's not that the characters were great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, well, I will say that similar to like loving first-person narration, I definitely prefer a character-focused book, but I was thinking about this a lot when we discussed this a little bit earlier. And it's interesting because the romance genre is very plot-focused if you think about it, because it's all about the plot of them falling in love and getting to that point where they're together, usually. So I think that the genre that I prefer, romance, is a very plot-focused. But at the same time, if you're not rooting for the characters and you don't love the characters, then what's the point of reading it? On to the next question. Do you care about prose?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, 100%. So much. But, okay.
But you're willing to look past it because...
I'm willing to look past it.
No offense, but Sanderson's prose isn't the best.
He gets better. Keep reading his books. Like, you've only read early on books, then he gets better, but...
Okay.
But still, like, he even will admit, like, in interviews I've heard Brandon Sanderson say, like, yeah, I don't put a lot of focus there. I get too excited about my, like, plot or whatever, and I just want to move it along, which
but
is
he's a good
fine.
character writer.
Oh, 100%. I love his characters, yeah. So
that's probably why you can look past it.
Yeah.
His prose isn't bad either. It's just like...
almost non-existent.
Yeah. It's
what
just,
prose?
Yeah.
But, so, for example, you'll hear everyone say this, but it's for damn good reason. Joe Abercrombie. They're not flowery. So when I say care about prose, I don't mean like, you know, elaborate poem-like flowery things that... No, like, Joe Abercrombie, straight to the point, very, you know, he doesn't throw in, I don't know, like, big words or whatever for the sake of it, but, like, you feel it. Like, and he adds, like, Robert Jordan, you'll notice now, will do this as well, in the sense that, like, character will walk into his room. If you're reading someone, like, okay, I'm sorry, if you read the first, like, the initial Grisha books and you loved them, yay, great. But
are you sure you want to mention Shadow and Bone, given how popular
the show is great. The show, you know why the show?
No, you've not watched it.
I watched a couple episodes.
1.5, 1.5 episodes we've gotten through.
Okay.
1.5.
Because we have a toddler and we would love to watch it.
And
but
even despite the fact that we love Ben Barnes, like I love Ben Barnes.
Our son is named Dorian basically because of his
Dorian
portrayal.
Gray, and also because I love the picture of Dorian Gray. But like,
just for me,
your only interaction with the picture of Dorian Gray at the time was the film with Ben Barnes.
He's amazing. Besides the point, if you've read the Grisha books, especially the first one, it's very early on in the author's career at that point too. Her books do 100% get way, way, way better.
Yeah, like Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are
great.
markedly better than the Grisha trilogy, in my opinion.
I found felt like I was reading Sparks' notes to something that had a lot of potential, but it was literally I was reading the Sparks. So you would get a scene where a character would walk into a room and they would talk to someone else, they would leave. That would be the end of it. Maybe there would be a sentence, but they were angry.
It was almost written like a screenplay, which is why it lends itself to
yes. Why the show is great, but the book stuff was like,
yeah.
But Abercrombie character walks into a room. They're feeling pain in their leg that's like stinging up their whole body, Glaucon, for example, whatever, and they're like sweating or whatever, and they look across them and notice whatever, and it makes them think of whatever before they say so. So you think like they're beating around the bush, but they're not. He's enhancing the scene.
And interestingly, this is all in third person, but he's giving you a lot of the internal
100%
monologue of that character.
Yeah, even little things like this character got up to leave the room, he'll put a little thing like, you know, despite the exhaustion, he forced himself up, and you know, whatever.
I'll briefly answer this question by saying that I am a Victorianist. I studied Victorian literature in university, and so obviously I care about prose because you don't read, you know, Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens, which is maybe arguably my favorite novel of all time, and not care about prose. But anyway, on to the next question, which I feel like we've already kind of answered, but how introspective do you want your characters to be?
Depends on who does it and how well, but fairly? As long as it doesn't feel like you're just beating the same thing over the head and you're like, okay, move on.
Oh gosh. Sometimes the romance genre in particular is very repetitive. It can be. You know, the characters just ruminating over and over on the same feelings that they have for the other character over and over, and that's like annoying. Like, it's like, okay, we get it. Also, I'm not a huge fan when it's like the character hates the other, like the obvious main love interest, and then is just constantly, oh, I hate him, and it's like, but you actually love him or her or whatever. Anyway, side note. But yeah, I see what you're saying. How do you like
It's funny that you say that, and the book you've recommended to me to read is called The Hating Game, and it's basically that premise.
Yeah. I think Sally Thorne is a very unique writer, and she's hilarious, and so that is, it's different. But
Fair.
yeah, okay, fair. But enemies to lovers is a very popular romantic trope, so, you know. How do you like your relationships? Like,
how do I like my relationships? Steamy. Next.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I guess that applies to fantasy too.
100%.
Anyway, another video for another time. Do you like a lot of description?
Yes, again, if it's done to enhance. Like, people will say Robert Jordan in Wheel of Time. He goes on and on.
Like,
and
I heard something about how a video somewhere, which made me nervous to read Wheel of Time, about how he describes like curtains
and every button and every.
Yeah.
But honestly, he doesn't do it. People exaggerate. Obviously, if he was going to describe every button on everyone's coats, the books would be even longer. But he doesn't do it without purpose. Like, if he's describing something, it's because he wants to remind you of something or tell you something about your setting and character that's relevant and gives more to the scene or plot. It's not just, and here's every pattern on this guy's coat for no reason.
I don't think I've encountered too much of that so far in reading Wheel of Time. Do I like a lot of description? Yes and no, for the same reasons, because sometimes it can take you out of things and it's not necessary. But then again, I've read a lot of Dickens, and you know, haven't read a description of the River Thames in London unless you've read Dickens. I mean, but again, I think it's purposeful, and sometimes it's not. But also, I will say this. One of my sort of pet peeves when reading is that I really don't like it if the author doesn't describe the characters. And I know, like, that there's a really, like, clunky and unsophisticated way to do that, but I want to know what color the character's hair is and their eyes, and I want to be able to, like, picture them. I want to know, you know, if in a romance novel they're going to a wedding, what the main character is wearing, because I want to be able to picture her. I'm a very visual person.
Well, especially with scenes like that, like going to a wedding, going on a date. I feel like that's
tell
a
me
good
what.
part of that's important.
I've read some things recently where that I haven't gotten enough of a description where I'm like actually struggling to picture the character, and I don't want that.
No.
Like,
no, because then
what's the point? Do you prefer standalones or a series?
Ooh.
This is an obvious answer for you.
Obviously.
Okay.
No, my sound was wow, we're gonna give different answers here. I love Wheel of Time, longest fantasy book series ever written, going by word count, especially if you throw in Newsspring.
Is it? It's longer than Malazan.
Any of them, yeah. My understanding is that Malazan is the second by word count, if my research is correct. So,
and then Robin Hobbs,
which I'm reading now, and then I'm going to do Robin Hobbs. I know it's not one continuous series necessarily, but I'm going to do Robin Hobbs' Realm of the Elderlings. I think that's what it's called. But I'm planning to do it right after Malazan. So obviously, I love being just immersed. I love knowing, like, okay, the next month of my life, I am just in this world whenever I have leisure time.
I am more of a standalone lover, obviously. I feel like most romance novels are standalones, probably.
Maybe a sequel or two.
Even Victorian novels, like, you don't, like, Dickens didn't write sequels, or series, but, so this is why, like, my experience of reading Wheel of Time will be interesting, because I said to you the other day, I've never immersed myself in a world like that. Like, certainly never 15 books. I've read series, romance and other genres. I've read some, like, YA fantasy series, but I have never, like, immersed myself since I was, like, young and read, like, The Babysitter's Club or something. Like, 15 books is, like, I've never done anything like that. So I am actually really excited to try it out and get immersed in that and just, like, be constantly with the same character. Sometimes it's actually sad to leave characters behind in a standalone. So yeah, That'll be interesting.
Yeah, like I've even read series where it's like, I wish this was longer and let me just sit with these characters more and did more with them. Like it was Mark Lawrence's Book of the Ancestor trilogy, like Holy Sister, what those books. And I liked them, but I was just like, I just feel like there could have been so much more depth and so much more to this than these 3 books.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay, next. Do you prefer single point of view or multiple point of view?
Multiple, 100%. Give me the whole, like, give me everyone's perspective.
Even if it's first person, you want
especially,
like...
yeah.
I actually tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I do really love a romance where it gives you, say for example, the heroine's perspective and the hero's perspective. I really like to read both usually in romances. But I mean, single point of view works well for me. Again, I think that depends on the strength of the writer and what they're trying to accomplish.
Like,
Actually, there you go. The Time Traveler's Wife is one of my all-time favorite novels, which is written in third person, but it does alternate perspectives.
Yeah, that's what I like best, I think. Third person, alternate. Having said all this, depends on what the goal is and how it's done. Like Jim Butcher's Dresden Files. Yeah, first person, never switches character perspective. It's all him. And at the same time, it at first starts off like almost like detective novels. And you're like, cool, it's a bunch of standalones. But then it just sneaks up on you this giant fantastical world that all coming together. Yeah, and it's actually really, really unique experience to have a world develop like this. But the whole time you're kind of like wearing blinders. And just from this, of like Dresden, of the main character. No, he's still got a couple more, I think. I think he said 3 more, something like that.
Okay, and then our final question for this little video is, do you prefer a strong start, middle, or end to a book? Or series, I guess.
I mean, honestly,
why would you want a strong middle?
You know what's funny? I was gonna say that.
What? You were gonna say middle?
To an extent. No. Okay, that was the thing I was kind of like. Obviously, everyone's gonna say strong
by
ends,
the middle.
Obviously.
No, to me, by the middle, I'm already in it. I'm already invested. If I've made it to the middle of the journey, then like you've done something to grab me. To me, a story has to have a strong start, because if you don't grab me, then and I don't care about your characters or the plot, like. Best Served Cold is a good example of that. I got 100 pages into it, and from what you told me about the ending, it would have gotten really good, but I wasn't invested in the characters enough, and I should have been. To get to that point. Because think about all that happens to them in the beginning of that book. We won't spoil it.
Which is weird. Like most people, a lot of people really love like that one. It's funny that you read First Law. Sorry, not First Law. The Blade itself, and you loved that, and that was the one that was, and like.
People say is like the weakest. But that's the thing, like to me you need a strong start to get me hooked. For example, I already said I'm only 40 pages into Wheel of Time as of right now, but I already love Tam, Althor. So I'm hooked a little bit. And I know he's not the main character, but obviously he's very influential and Rand is his son, so I'm assuming there's some like similarities between them, maybe some differences. So I'm already very interested in that. But
also that prologue, like but
we had talked about the prologue when you read it. You had told me a lot about the prologue, and I feel like I even heard some of it in the audiobook. So the prologue, I was kind of like expecting everything that happened. But yeah, it was interesting. But I've liked everything after the prologue better so far, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So I think you need a strong start.
Yeah.
A strong finish is great too, like especially I guess with romances when you get to that end and usually there's that declaration of love, like you want that to pull out your heartstrings. But usually I guess also with the genre that I read, mostly romance, the ending is predictable.
You know what it
even Victorian novels, you know, they would always end in a marriage.
Yeah.
So
like, it's cool when it blows your mind and you're like, that didn't go where I thought it was going to go, unless it's breaking its tone promise from the beginning, in which case it's just an
Yeah, you can have like a really bad ending, and then that I think could ruin the whole book.
Sure, yeah. But
what's an example of that? Can you
think really bad ending?
That ruined the whole book.
Sure. We're going to get hate stuff from this.
Uh-oh. Was it Shadow and Bone?
No.
Oh.
No. Good guess. The series by V. Schwab that I read.
Oh, you hated Darker Shade of Magic.
God.
I haven't even read it because he hated it so much.
I do not understand it.
And I had bought the whole series.
I read all of them.
I was intending to read them, but I bought it years ago and never got around to it. And he decided to pick them up first, and I'm glad that he read them first.
This isn't going to spoil anything for you, hopefully, maybe. I don't know. If you haven't read it and you really want to read it, skip the next 30 seconds. But still, no really real spoilers. Essentially, all characters go, cool, we should come up with a plan. This is the plan, great, let's go do that plan. Let's get this thing we need for the plan. Let's do the plan. We did the plan.
The end.
The end. It's like, why did you write that?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. So I think a strong start and a not terrible end.
Sure, no one wants the ending to, but like, assuming everything is good enough, if one part has to be exceptional, honestly, for me, I think it's still the middle, because that's the part that like is lackluster in a lot of books, right? You're like the author has a cool ending in mind, and it's like a good book, and then the middle is where like you really test the middle. Yeah,
that's true of romances too. Like the middle is where you have that spice and like the
or you can start to
chemistry. Yeah, true. Yeah, the chemistry and the like. Yeah, heart racing.
So that made you come full circle to the answer you mocked. Excellent.
That's a good point.
Okay, was that last question?
Yes, it was. So that ends our sort of reading preferences video. Thank you so much for watching if you made it to the end of our like ramblings. So if you did enjoy this video, we'd love if you would like and subscribe. Again, it feels super awkward to say that.
Yeah. But we got it. Like and subscribe, please.
Yes, and yeah, thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
Excellent.